I imagine that this threw all kinds of shockwaves through Hollywood because they probably have 100 disaster movie scripts sitting on the shelf and they're going to have to rethink everything. Imagine the next time an airplane goes down and people are on an island and they're looking for cell service and they don't have it. And then they're like, who's got T-Mobile? But I mean, think about it. Tsunami movies, all these movies out there, they're going to have to rethink it all. If you don't have, well, I guess they could have the main characters, they were on Verizon. Wah, wah, wah. But if you have T-Mobile, you're going to be saved. Everybody loves to travel. Most of us love adventure. My wife and I would talk about traveling.
One day, we both looked at each other and said, let's just do it. We sold our house and liquidated most of our belongings.
We bought a fifth wheel, loaded up the dogs, and hit the road. We invite you to join us on our journey. The Captain and Michelle Road Trip. Hello RV friends and family. Today we're going to be talking about Starlink versus Mofi Router. This is my fourth video in the series where I'm comparing Starlink to other types of internet services. I will put the links in the description below if you want to catch up on the previous videos. A small little rehashing of what we've talked about. We've been through Nomad Internet, canceled the service. We found the Mofi Router. We've been using the Mofi Router as our backup, and there's many reasons why, which I'm going to discuss a little bit more in this video. I've also talked about the reason why I like having a mesh network or a network, a second tier network on top of my incoming router, whatever that may be, whether it's the Starlink router or the Mofi router. So those are things that we've covered before, and of course we did some speed tests and whatnot. So check those out if you like. But let me go ahead and go forward from here. Now, we've been full-timing for about 7 months, maybe 8 months. As I've talked about, it's really important for me to have internet specifically because I still work from the RV, full-time RVing in general. If you are traveling around, there are two types of internet you can get. You're either going to get a satellite internet or you're going to get some kind of a hotspot internet off of a SIM card from one of the main carriers. That's the only two options you have. And what I have found is that if you're full-time RVing and you like to watch movies, stream your Netflix or your Amazon, or if you work from your RV, it's going to be really important for you to have unlimited internet. There are ways to get unlimited internet using both methods, the satellite method or the hotspot method. And so we've been going through those processes and figuring out which is the best way to go. Now, if you're one of those people that is retired or you really don't have a lot of need for unlimited internet, you don't stream movies, you just want to be able to check your emails or surf the internet, then you do not need unlimited internet. So I have a solution for you as well if you stay tuned. Being full-time, we started with Nomad Internet and found quickly that it was not going to suffice. Of course, when Starlink became available for RVs, I jumped right on it. Got the equipment, was like $700 for all the initial setup equipment, and it costs $135 a month. What I have found, whether you go with Starlink or with another service, if you're planning to have unlimited internet, then it's going to be, the sweet spot seems to be around $130 to $150 a month, no matter which company you go with. Over the last 6 months, we've done a lot of experimenting and of course put Starlink into action. What I found is that Starlink is a very viable full-time internet service if you're traveling. There are problems though. First of all, we like to travel to state parks. In state parks, there's a lot of them are fully wooded, so you're going to have tons of obstruction, and I mean it. When you put your Starlink out, I don't care if you put it up on the roof or out on the stand somewhere, if you don't have just clear blue skies, almost 360 degrees around you, there's going to be some form of obstruction. And it's interesting to see that, but if you're in a state park, forget about it. You're not going to get any of that. So the Starlink just doesn't really work in environments where there's just tons of trees. Even if you have a clearing and you're pointing it through that clearing, if there's trees around it, then you're going to have obstruction and oftentimes really degraded service. Another problem that I found with Starlink is there's a lot of people that say the service is congested because so many people are jumping on, and therefore you're not getting the same quality of service as you might have gotten in the beginning. I believe that there is truth to that. Tons of people are jumping onto the Starlink bandwagon, but honestly, when it comes to my work, sitting down, being able to upload, download things, work, even streaming movies off Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and whatever else, generally there's no problems using the Starlink when it works, when we're in an area where we can use it. We're not in a heavily wooded area. The other problem is live TV, and we found this out because we like to watch football, and I just got my wife into fantasy football, and she's in a league this year, which is really cool. We're having a fun time with that. So when you watch something live, there are issues with Starlink. It just can't pull the data down fast enough, so you end up with a lot of sputtering. It stops a lot, and I noticed the same thing with phone calls. We have Verizon, which apparently I thought it was a great service, but it's really not that great. We've run into lots of issues with our cell phones, and so we try to use Wi-Fi calling when we need to, and there's a lot of dropped calls. So live data, the latency issues with Starlink do come into play. So it drops calls when you watch something live, unless you're getting like 100 megabits or more, which last night we watched Thursday Night Football, and we were getting plenty of bandwidth coming in from Starlink, and we were able to watch the game. There was some times where it got a little fuzzy, but it didn't stop, it didn't buffer, and we were able to watch it. So by and large, I'm pretty happy with Starlink, and you're not going to get anything perfect. I don't care what you do. If you go with your hotspot data, when you're traveling around the country roaming, trying to get full-time internet, and you're stopping in different parks, and there's unknown elements like trees, or you don't know where the cell towers are, no matter what service you have, you're going to end up with some kind of issues. So there's no perfect solution. What we're trying to do is something that allows us to work, allows us to enjoy our lifestyle. In that case, Starlink is still a fantastic option. Like I said, the service is $135 a month for the RVs. We are generally getting 80% use out of it wherever we stop, but you have to have a backup plan, which is why I have the Mofi router. Fortunately, I did find this router through some friends, and it is a fantastic router. I love this router. In fact, I even pondered the idea of replacing Starlink as my #1 option and going to the Mofi router.
Hi.
We got serious problems right now.
We got big problems. Big problems. And he got me involved in this, and now I'm not happy.
So I gotta lean all the way down here for this. All right. So we decided to do fantasy football together because we wanted to play with my son, and we needed to fill up the league, and I convinced my wife to join the league because I needed one more player.
And I like football, but I didn't know anything about a fantasy football. Like, what the heck?
But she's learning. And tonight, we have
opposing quarterbacks playing.
I've got Herbert. She's got Mahomes. She's got a couple other players on the Chiefs. And God bless Starlink and Elon Musk. I love them. But the Starlink is not getting the job done. But I've been doing these videos about Mofi, Nomad, Starlink, and I'm really leaning towards Mofi. So I ended up buying this antenna, which is a couple $100, and some cables to run it all the way out there, and I'm going to put this antenna up on the roof for the Mofi router for the cell data, and I think it's going to be superior to the Starlink.
I hope so, because, I mean, look at what we're dealing with, people. Look at that.
Yeah.
This is what we're dealing with. Can you see that? Slow internet connection. Which means we cannot watch the game. Which means
it's a disaster.
We're very unhappy in the Howard household.
We got so frustrated. We unhooked the Starlink, and I did a bunch of stuff. Whatever. We've got the Mofi router over there running, and it's pulling a great signal, and we're watching the game.
Finally. Yes.
And this is without the antenna, the external antenna, and without the cables. That was a fun night. But like I said, we were having trouble downloading live television on Starlink because if we were only getting 50 or 60 megabytes per second, it's going to sputter. So we got the antennas and the cables. I had every intention of testing the Mofi router, and that's what's really cool about this router. You can use it without the antennas. You can put antennas on it. It's expandable. You're not stuck to any particular type of antenna. You're not stuck to any type of carrier. You can use any SIM card. It really is highly versatile, and I just love that router. I mean, the customer service alone is spectacular. It's worth its weight in gold just for that. You call them up, someone answers the phone, they solve your problem, they're knowledgeable, you don't have to go through some kind of a phone loop. I mean, I think you have to push 2 for technical support or something, but regardless, it's really a fantastic router all the way around. And there are some unlimited options for the Mofi router. There are actually RV companies. If you do a search on Google for unlimited RV internet, you'll come across some companies. I think one of them was 4grv.com or .net or something like that. But they'll give you a T-Mobile SIM card and you can use your router. Some of these companies want you to use their routers, which I would stay away from those because you end up with something like Nomad Internet, which is pointless, especially for full-time traveling RVers. But if you can get your own router, there are companies out there that will allow you to use your router. They send you a SIM card and they'll offer an unlimited service. Like I said, for around $120, $130, $140 a month, so it's all about the same sweet spot. The reason I opted against going to that as my number one is because when you're traveling full time, if you do not have a service like that, if you're trying to just use a carrier and a SIM card and some hotspots, inevitably you're going to run out of data during the month, and then they're going to throttle that data, and then your whole life is going to be miserable. And the reason I did not go with one of the services that I can get unlimited for $120 or $130 a month is because you're stuck with the one carrier. I mean, I guess it's similar with Starlink. I've just got Starlink. I suppose if I were going to use my Mofi router, I could do a service like that, and then I could switch to a different carrier with a SIM card if I wanted. So that option exists, and that's actually what we're doing. The 20% of the time when the Starlink is not working, we do use the Mofi router. I have SIM cards from Verizon, from AT&T, and T-Mobile. Some are prepaid. My Verizon one is a monthly fee. I'm paying $20 a month, and I get like 15 gigs of data. So these are situations where if I'm at a state park for a week, I can get through it no problem. And I'm pulling any kind of a cell signal. If my Verizon doesn't work, I can use my AT&T prepaid SIM card and so on. So that is a fantastic backup option. But like I said, if you are one of these people that does not need nearly as much data or bandwidth as that me and my wife need, you could easily drop your bill and you can basically just pay as you go with a Mofi router. Once you buy the router, you can buy prepaid SIM cards for whatever the price, and depending on how much you're using. And once your data is used, you just go online and fill the card back up. So you could really save a lot of money if your internet needs are not that demanding. And here's the final kicker. I got the antenna for the Mofi, I got the cables, I was ready to make the switch, and I was gonna give it a shot. And then I read the news that Starlink has a deal with T-Mobile, and the plan is that they're going to share data spectrum. The vision is that no matter where you are on the planet, that you can have high-speed internet and you can have cell coverage anywhere in the world, and I guess in particular in the United States for starters. Sharing data spectrum means that obviously the signal is going to work in conjunction with the satellites and the cell towers. So that means that your service, whether you have obstruction or not, should be functioning with a Starlink dish. It also means that if you're in an area where there's no cell towers, that your cell phone should be able to bounce and work off of a Starlink satellite. I imagine that this threw all kinds of shockwaves through Hollywood because they probably have 100 disaster movie scripts sitting on the shelf and they're going to have to rethink everything. Imagine the next time an airplane goes down and people are on an island and they're looking for cell service and they don't have it. And then they're like, who's got T-Mobile? But I mean, think about it. Tsunami movies, all these movies out there, they're going to have to rethink it all. If you don't have, well, I guess they could have the main characters, they were on Verizon. Wah, wah, wah. But if you have T-Mobile, you're going to be saved. And also the other deciding factor was that Starlink is expanding its network significantly in 2023. At least that's what they're saying. They're going to put satellites up all over the place. So you should get better coverage. That should alleviate the network congestion that people are saying they're experiencing now. I think Starlink is a forward-thinking company. I believe they're going to figure this out. I believe they're going to have probably the best option, not only just for RVers, but for everyone in general, because what an amazing opportunity it is to be able to roam wherever you want with your satellite and have high-speed internet. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this channel, not just for the Starlink updates, but also our fun adventures. I have a new series I'm going to be working on. It's going to be our solar situation. I've got Delta Pro EcoFlow battery systems. I've got foldable solar panels that I can put out at an angle in the sun, and we're going to see how that whole system works. I also have put some soft starts on my ACs so I can run both ACs on a 30 amp output. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.